Boy, can I help you?
Listen up. I'm bringing you the best content to ever exist in the door-to-door industry, from sales, leadership, recruiting, and personal development.
Well, why would I need that?
Because never before have we been able to collaborate with the top experts in their industries, sharing their secrets and techniques on what makes them the best.
Wait, who are you?
I'm your host, Sam Taggart, creator of the DDD Experts and DDD Con. Is there a place we can sit down?
Well, come on in.
We are excited to announce Jordan Belfort, the real Wolf of Wall Street, at D2DCon 2019, January 10th through 12th in Salt Lake City. Register today at d2dcon.com. Come as a team, learn as a team, leave as a team.
All right, everybody, this is Sam Taggart with the DDD Podcast, and I am here with a very special guest, Russell Dean. Now, he was the #1 sales rep for Spectrum 3 years in a row. He is the author of Door Knocker's Guide to the Universe. He is probably one of the best door knockers in the country. And I'm super excited to have him out on our podcast because typically the audience is, solar reps, alarm reps. So this is a whole different industry that some of us have not really learned about. And there's thousands and thousands of Spectrum salespeople all over the country. And we're about to go deep dive with the #1. We're going to talk on, mindset, how to have a positive mental attitude. We'll talk on manifesting. We'll talk a little bit on his book. And we'll talk about where you can find it if you're interested in more content around door-to-door sales. And yeah, super excited to have you on the show, Russell. Welcome out.
Cool. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited. I love what you're doing, and you're definitely filling a void in the industry where people, corporations want employees to go out and knock on doors, but they don't have the know-how to teach them. And that's where you come in. So super excited to be here too.
So tell us, what are you most excited about right now? Like, what are you most excited about?
What do you mean, in industry or in life?
Anything in life. What are you most excited about?
Really? Cryptocurrency.
Why do you say that?
Oh, just because they're calling it the greatest transfer of wealth in human history. So already you have 18-year-old multimillionaires driving Lamborghinis around. I've never seen this happen. I don't think it's ever happened where, you could buy $100 worth of cryptocurrency and have $300,000 worth of it. That's on like altcoins, but like, let's say you bought $100 worth of Bitcoin in 2010, you'd have $100 million right now. So that's pretty exciting stuff, right? Who doesn't like money?
Oh, that's cool. I love it. Okay, so tell us a little bit about how you got recruited into door-to-door sales. How did you find it? How long you've been doing it? Tell us a little bit about your background.
So I've done business-to-business door knocking before I was doing residential door knocking. And although that's challenging, it's nothing compared to knocking on residential doors. Hey, you may get rude prospects and find everything from guns and dogs and business to business knocking on doors, but it's nothing compared to residential because at least they're expecting it, and business to business, the people to come in and just solicit to them. Residential, whether they should expect it or not, of course, in my mind, I think any person that lives in a house should expect it, and the way to avoid it would be like my house, where it's just a full-on, you pull up to my driveway, it's a solid fence, you're not even going to have a chance to door knock at me. So that's how I see it in my mind. Hey, if you don't have this whole 8-foot high fence surrounding you and stuff, and I'm able to get to your door, then you must like solicitors. But the fact is, they don't all think that way, and it makes the job way more challenging. That's the bad news. The good news is because it is so challenging and not very many people can do it, that's why you have the potential to make so much money doing it, which equates to life and money, period, because that's how people get paid. If all you can do is exchange money at a cash register, you're going to make minimum wage because everybody can do that. You get to these other tiers where you find somebody like yourself that has the tenacity, the strength, the willpower to throw the fear out over your shoulder and go knock on that door with a smiling face, you're going to get paid quite well for your efforts for being successful.
That's awesome. So tell us a little bit about the book and what kind of caused you to write a book about door knocking. You know, not many people, there's very few. There's the DDD Millionaire, there's mine, the ABCs of Closing, and
awesome.
Those are the only three I've seen so far that I know of. And so that's why I'm like, we need to get Russell on DDD Virtual. So I'm excited to hear from you. We're going to hear from him, those that are listening, June 5th through the 7th at the conference, the virtual conference. But I ran into Russell, March at a roofing conference, and I saw that you had this book, and I was like, no way, like that is so
right
cool.
Across from you.
I know, right across. So I want to learn about it. So tell us.
It's not a coincidence.
It isn't a coincidence.
That was awesome. And you know what's cool about you is, after I met you, I was telling my wife, because she was there too, I was telling her, I'm like, there's something unique about Sam, this and that. She looked at me, she said, he's a nice guy. I'm like, you're right, he's a nice guy. And nice guys, they're hard to find, and that may sound a little bit weird, but we all pick up on vibes from everybody, and so do your prospects when you're knocking at a door. So important. And anyways, I just got a good vibe from you, and I like what you're doing. I think it's awesome. I think you're helping a lot of people go from not making any money to the minimum to making the maximum. You know,
I love it.
And they'll listen to you. They'll do it.
I appreciate that, Russell. So yeah, tell us a little bit about what started the whole book idea. Like, were you sitting in your room like, I'm gonna write a book, or did somebody ask you? Like, how did that all kind of start?
Well, the book idea came about. Have you ever heard of Bob Proctor?
No.
Yeah. Okay. So Bob Proctor he was in the movie The Secret. He's old. He's probably like 78, 80. Very rich man, great life story. But anyways, I had bought one of his audiobooks on iTunes, and I was jogging and listened to it. I probably listened to it like 30 times over and over. And one of the things he talked about was passive income and how important passive income, because the very worst way to make money is exchanging your time for it. The best way to make money is getting checks in the mail without doing anything. That's passive income. But we all got to start somewhere. It's exchanging your time for money to build up that passive income. So he was just like, do this for passive income, do that for passive income. What can you do that other people can't do? If you have a gift like that, write a book. A book can be selling while you're sleeping. And I already have a knack for helping people make more money. I do it with all my friends, family, my prospects. I'll turn somebody's whole life around in a 30-minute closing deal just by exposing their talents and sending them on that road. But anyways, that's what sparked the book from there, because I already knew I could do what other people can't do. When I took my current position, knocking on doors at Spectrum, nobody could even make their goal. And I made my goal since day one, exceeded my goal. So in the back of my mind, I wanted to work as hard as I could until everybody figured it out. And my fear is that everybody would figure it out and start making their goals and exceeding their goals. Then the company would raise the goal. It never happened. So as time went on, I'm realizing, wow, I can really do what nobody else can do. So then I really, what I enjoy doing the most and what my gift is in teaching and helping people make more money and improve their life, period. Not even with sales, even though everybody's a salesperson, even if they don't want to admit it. So I wrote the book, and then I began my quest to become the #1 salesman for Spectrum in the nation out of thousands of salesmen 3 years in a row on purpose, so that, somewhere in this book, it says on the back, my credentials, my street cred, because I am the type of guy who really finds it hard to take advice from somebody who hasn't done what I want to do. So that was really important to me. And I did that, and I crushed it. I broke every single record at this Fortune 500 company, and it wasn't like I was beating everybody by a few sales, 10 sales, 20 sales, more like about a third more sales come the end of the year.
Yeah.
And
So those that are listening, to put things into perspective, I mean, he did over 722 triple plays bundles, where the next closest guy did in the 400s. So, I mean, it's, I think, to put things into perspective, those that don't know the lingo and that, just triple plays, I mean, you outperformed astronomically, like you said, a third more than everyone else. And, to try to put that in comparison to alarms or solar and stuff like that, it's like, that's a big deal. It's a big deal.
I worked my tail off to do it too. The beautiful thing is that when you have a goal and you set out to do something, and I learned this from Jim Rome. Are you familiar with Jim Rome?
Yeah.
Okay, Tony Robbins' mentor. He's the bomb. But he taught me something really valuable that I teach now. It's the same stuff. Most of these things, these life lessons, they don't change. The people that tell the stories change as time goes on, but the fundamentals of life and the way the universe works is all the same. But he talks about the law of averages. So let's say your goal is to get 4 closes a day, and you start reaching that. Now that becomes easier. Now you can actually, before you were having to, say, being the first person out on the street and the last person out on the street to get, say, 4 sales, now you could be the latest person out on the street and the first one home every day, because once you achieve that, your average, it's easier to maintain. And I think, I don't know baseball real well, but isn't that the same with like batting averages and stuff? The people that like achieve it usually maintain it pretty good.
Oh yeah. So tell us, it sounds like you've had kind of a good journey of like personal development and like you spent a lot of time reading books and going to seminars and investing in yourself. Tell us about some of your favorite books or courses or conferences or whatever that you found most impactful in your journey.
I'd say the 2 books that had the most profound influence on my sales career and overall happiness would definitely be the book The Secret. I read it. I already knew what they were saying was good information because I was already doing a lot of the stuff and it worked for me. So I was really excited, and I just took all the fundamentals from the book The Secret and applied it to my life every single day. And it takes a lot of faith to do that, because you could see instant changes, but it could take a month, 6 months, 12 months, a year, 2 years for these manifestations to come to fruition. And I'd say the other sales book, and The Secret isn't even a sales book, but it's more of a manifest book. The other big book that changed my selling mentality and my ability to do what other people couldn't do was it's called, I think, The Little Book of Yes by Jeffrey Gitomer. What's so weird is that he's got a lot of books out. None of them have compared to that book, and it was out of print forever. He recently relaunched it. But what was so surprising when I read that book was when I was done, I was like, only 20% of it was sales techniques. 80% of it was all self-improvement. And this all began to sink in that sales was about 80% self-improvement and 20% sales techniques. You can have all the sales techniques down in the world, know how to get your prospect to say yes, know to give the because reason, know to identify the value, expose the value. You can know all this stuff. If you're not happy with who you are as a human being and you don't love yourself to the highest level, therefore you can't love other people at the highest level, that's going to shine like a shining star. Your prospects are going to pick up on that vibe. Within 2 seconds of you talking to them, they pick up a bad vibe from you, that door is getting shut. They pick up a good vibe from you, they don't know why they like you. They're going to be inviting you in the house. You've heard it a million times, I know you have, without even asking you, that they never let people in the house. The reason why is you're a good guy. I know even from the short amount of time that I've known you that you're very comfortable and happy with who you are. I can tell you're a loving person. That kind of stuff shines through. And if anybody out there thinks the prospects don't pick up on that, they're wrong. Maybe not all of them will, but I want to close about everybody that I talk to. So you might as well put every single little edge in your favor.
Yeah. So talk to us a little bit on like mindset. So like, you know, some of the principles of your book that we were talking about before this were, you know, the power of positive mindset, or, you know, you mentioned the power of manifestation and secret. So tell us a little bit about those two theories and kind of your philosophy behind how do you have a positive mindset in such a hard job?
That's a great question. So to rewind a little bit, it's very common for people to read books like The Secret or anything else on the power of positivity, and you'll hear them say, oh, that didn't work for me. And it's because it's not enough. Positivity would be like one of the tires on your car. Is it everything? No, not by a long shot. You have a motor in a car, a steering wheel, a frame, a body. Can the car drive with three tires? Yeah. Is it driving properly? No. So positivity is just a piece of your arsenal and who you are that will help you drive on four wheels and do 160 miles an hour down the freeway, as opposed to scraping one rim everywhere you go. So that's very important. And it is a big problem where people give up on positivity because it didn't work for them. Well, the thing with being positive is it's one part of the puzzle. The other big part of the puzzle, amongst other things, is the action. You can't just have action, getting out there and hitting the doors, going hard without your mental preparation, without your positivity. And you can't be a positive person without and not have the 100% action and effort to make it happen. So you could manifest everything you want in the world, but if you're not taking action steps to get there, it's not going to work. It's a two-part system.
I love that. So let's say I'm a rep, and I'm sure you've dealt with this in leadership and sales and seen people on your team, and maybe you've even been there, you know, and I'm in a slump, right? What can I do to pull myself out of a slump mentally? Because essentially that's all it is, right? It's like a mental slump that we are just being the victim, right? And we're stuck. But what are some best practices to try to get myself out of that slump?
And you know what? And Zig Ziglar is a mentor of mine. He still is, even though he's not with us anymore. And he taught, and it's weird how stuff sticks in your mind because it's a fearful thought. He puts in there that every salesman can experience a slump. I've never had one. I don't allow myself to go there. And I never forgot what he said that because it's scary, right? Who wants to be making 50 grand a month and have zero the next month? Nobody. You want to stay on top. So you don't have to have slumps. And it's not a bad thing. It can happen to anybody. It's a lack of focus. This is what happened to me one time. So when 2008 happened and the economy crashed, I had really good income coming in from sales, and that market went completely dry out. I had $2 million in property, which I was shelling out about 10 grand a month for in mortgage payments. Well, with no income, it's hard to keep up with that. And I had to redo everything, man. And that's when I really had a redefining moment in my life. And I had to start all over and crack those books I was telling you about and apply them really hard and go out and start knocking on business doors and making it happen for myself. So, I became very successful. I was selling business to business, knocking on businesses' doors, and I was selling industrial simple green, not the normal simple green, but stuff that's made to replace hazardous chemicals with safe, non-toxic. Well, I became so good at it that I broke all the records at Simple Green for being the #1 distributor in the world doing that. And where I'm going with this is, once I started achieving all this success, I stopped doing what I did to get me there because I took it for granted.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't really call it a slump because the money was still coming in. And in the end, I ruined that business because I didn't take my mentor's advice and I kept selling, and it messed up my cash flow. One of the things about running a business that ends most businesses. So selling too much can hurt you as the owner of a business. But in retrospect, I did learn that lesson that I stopped doing what it took to get me there because I just took it for granted. And I guess you could call that a slump. And I just never allowed myself for that to happen to me again. And the reason why, and I'll go over all the morning rituals and everything I do broken down in detail at D2D virtual, exactly. In detail, I'll go through with that. But that's what it is. You have to, okay, so if you do maintenance on your car, that's great. Your car's running great. You got the oil change, the coolant change and all that stuff. Is that good forever?
Nope.
It's not. You got to keep up with the maintenance. Well, your body and your mind is the same way. So if you're not constantly doing the positive reinforcement, the affirmations, the vision board, writing your long-term, short-term goals out every day and through the day, I do all this stuff every single day. On the weekends when I'm not working, I don't do a lot of it. I don't do a lot of it on my days off, but every day I'm working that I do. It's just a constant maintenance. So after all that stuff happened where I lost my business and then went back into the cable industry to knock on doors, I learned my lesson. I didn't forget about that. And I just continued on with these, you can just call it self-improvement every single day. And that's why I don't fall into slumps.
I love that. Yeah, it's we choose whether we fall in a slump or not. It's like we're the one dictating the slump. It's not the area. It's not the product. It's not the price. It's simply us choosing to say we're going to lose focus. We're going to get complacent. We're going to take things for granted. We're going to sit there and play the victim card, and we're going to create a slump. Well, it's like that slump you created. It's not that it just. It's not like somebody's like, here, have a slump. It's like, nobody just has a slump. Like, you're the one that made the slump. So
that's a beautiful thing to say. And I mean, you could change so many lives for people that just heard you say that. If Zig would have said that in his book, that wouldn't have been a fearful thought because my mind would have said, okay, I'm going to do all this self-improvement every day to make sure that never happens to me. That's a lot more comforting than every salesman is going to have a slump. And I love Zig and I've learned so much from him. The one thing is his credentials aren't that good. Is he one of the greatest sales coaches of all time? Absolutely. But the credentials aren't that great. He's great in everything. And that's where I wanted what I was doing to be different, to where, I know what I'm talking about and I've proven what I've done.
Yeah, and but that's like one of the reasons I love running into people like you and building the network around people that, you're in the shadow. I mean, it's not like we're on stage and we're in the, it's funny, like most podcasts, you go interview the Grant Cardones and you try to go interview these big wigs. And it's like, sometimes it's the guy that's sitting in his little bungalow up in Oregon, nothing around, you know what I mean? And gems, and I'm super glad that we were able to meet. So let's kind of wrapping up with like a couple last questions is when you go sell, like I want to kind of shift gears to more selling mode. What hours do you typically sell? Like what's your knocking schedule look like?
It really depends on the area. If you're in a place, it depends what I'm trying to do, how many days are in the month. I think to directly answer your question, is there a wrong hours to knock on doors? There's not. And this is the reason why. I don't know how like the alarm industry works or anything else like that, but basically, like let's say I'm given a territory to work, I'm going to start early as human possible. So to answer your question directly, the earliest I'm going to start is 11 o'clock a.m. I don't really feel too comfortable knocking on doors before then. How late will I stay out? That is until I have my required number for my own personal goal. So it could be, if I started at 11, it could be noon, it could be 1, it could be 9 o'clock, it could be 9:30. I do not like knocking on doors at nighttime. Have I? Tens of thousands of times. No problem. I'll do whatever it takes because I know that my money is sitting on the other side of that door and I want it. I want the money. And that's the attitude you got to have to overcome the fear. And I feel bad. I don't like knocking on people's doors at nighttime. I wouldn't like somebody knocking on my door at one time, but this is the profession that we chose. You need to step up and do it. And when you're knocking on doors at nighttime and it's dark, of course, a lot of people are going to be fearful, like, what's going on? And I'll just tell them right away, hey, all good news, with a big smile. Like, I don't want them to think anything's wrong because nothing's wrong. So to answer your question, the earliest I start is at 11 o'clock, and depending like what my daily goal is, that's when I'm going to stop knocking.
You'll go till you hit your number.
That's right.
I love that. And I think so many people, they just go until the day's over. And I think there's a difference between going until you hit your numbers versus going out there just to be out there. And it's like, oh, I knocked today. It's like, no, you didn't do anything technically. You didn't sell anything. You bageled. So it's like the hours aren't really
irrelevant.
They're irrelevant.
I want to touch on what you said real quick because that was genius. What you said is so huge in the sales world, not just door knocking. You said that people say, oh yeah, I was out there knocking from this time to this time. What does that matter? The only thing that matters is the money in your pocket.
The result.
So in the sales world, you'll find people that cannot close do stuff like that. They'll say, oh, I was out knocking from this hour to this hour. I knocked this many doors. What other irrelevant stuff can you tell me about yourself that you did that has nothing to do with closing? You want to worry about company policy and rules and all this.
Yeah, well, I didn't
do that.
Cancels, or I didn't, that's my favorite one. Well, my attrition's a lot less. I'm like, what? Like, what do you say? Because you can't close as many, like, or they'll say, I've heard like, oh, but you have better area, or, oh, I've heard so many things. And it's like, what do you mean? Like, oh, I ran out of neighborhood. I ran out of street. Like, so you stopped knocking? So then you just didn't want to hit your goal because you ran out of street? Like, there's hundreds of homes. Like, let's figure this out. Like, be a problem solver that says I'm committed to my daily goal. And I think that's, man, amen. Like, please listen, write that down. I think like so many more people need to realize it's not the hours. It's do whatever it takes to hit your goal.
That's right. Yep. Get the job done. And that's a common question that people in my industry ask me all the time. It's one of the first questions. What hours do you work? It's kind of it's okay if they're asking just for knowledge, but it's not okay if they're asking, if they're trying to uncover a secret. There isn't a secret.
Well, here's another important point to make though. I think a lot of people that do year round that are kind of like they're one-man bands or they go out on their own, a lot of solar people, your industry, stuff like that, where they don't get dropped off. A lot of people are like, well, I'm just going to knock prime time. And I think what's something super important to understand is like, well, your day starts at 11. Your day starts way early so that you did hit your goal by prime time a lot of times. But if you start at 6 or 7 o'clock at night expecting to go hit the numbers that you're supposed to be hitting, you're going to run out of time to knock. Like,
that's right.
Kind of simple. So like a lot of people think like, oh, I'm going to be a top performer. I'm going to be number one. I'm going to be so good. And they're like, but I just knocked during prime time. And it's kind of like
missed opportunities.
Yeah. You missed a ton of opportunities. I would rather go home early just saying I had a killer day than sitting there at 9:30 being like, I still don't have one. You know what I mean?
And the amount of stress, if you, let's say you started at prime time, which is, I'm guessing 3 o'clock, And by 5 o'clock, that's really prime time. If you don't have any sales, how stressed are you that you only have until 7 or 9? Like, it's horrible, man. I felt like crying out there lots of times. Like, it's real. Like, who wants that? You go out. So when I was really pushing the limits to come in first in the nation 3 years in a row, this is what I would do. In my territory, I would go through and I would get 2 sales early. And I would not allow myself to knock any more doors. Only previous worked territory. So what does that mean? More time in the field. I'm bouncing around to every single not home. Just how much more thorough could you be with your territory than that? Not much, but it's a level of commitment to want to be out there, because now, you got the early ones, the people that are home, but now you're waiting for the people to get home from work, and that can be stressful too, but at least you already banged out a couple cells,
Okay, so next question, then we'll kind of wrap up with this question. So I love this. So the next question would be, when you're like a one-man band, you don't have a manager, you don't have a guy holding your hand being like, oh, hey, let's get out there today. So I'm sure there's a lot of days where you wake up and you're like, oh, like I really have to go knock today. So what are some things that you do to get yourself, to hold yourself accountable in this job versus having somebody else hold you accountable? Like,
checklist.
How do you get yourself out of the doors or out the door instead of, being like, oh, they're going to get mad at me if I'm not out here? Like, where's that?
So I can answer that in a couple ways. So first of all, my nemesis was the rain. And I live in Oregon. What does it do here? It freaking rains. And the reason I had a phobia of rain when I was in the Army, I was in Korea. My first month out there, we went out for a 10-day jungle field training exercise, and it monsoon rained 10 days straight. Everything we owned was soaking wet. You go to get food, they serve you the food. Let's say you have bread on there, it's soaking wet. It's enough to create a phobia of rain. So, and I just dreaded it. It was a problem for me with the rain, with this job too. So what I did was a couple things. I got the very best rain gear you can buy, and this is a gem of information for every door knocker. You buy the very best rain gear there is. And by that, it's not that expensive. You're going to spend about $100 for a rain suit, a lot more than a $7 piece of junk rain suit. The reason why is they breathe. You will never sweat in a high quality rain suit. So you're comfortable and dry. It doesn't even affect you. And then and they stretch, so you're never going to rip the bottom out by squatting or whatever. The other thing I did was I prayed on it, and I prayed every day for the Lord to give me the strength to overcome this mentally so that it wasn't even an issue. I would say with those two things combined, within a couple months, rain doesn't bother me at all. And I'll be out there doing it in solid rain. I used to mentally have a hang up with my paperwork getting wet. My papers don't even get wet anymore. It was a whole mental, I would still go out there and do it, but the mental drain of gosh, I do not want to do this job anymore. Rain doesn't even come to the equation. Now, the other part of the answer to your question was, how do you stay motivated to go do a hard job? I'll go through this in the door-to-door virtual, but it's all in the mental preparation. I'll go through it real quick. I'll spend more time going through it later. First thing in the morning, before I even get out of bed, I'm doing my attitude of gratitude, and I'll go into more of that later. I do all my praying. I go straight over to the table. This is before I go to the bathroom or anything. First thing, wake up in the morning. I'm writing out my daily goals. I'm envisioning those daily goals. I'm then going to my vision board. I'm feeling great about my vision board and going through all of that. Once I'm done with that, I can do whatever I want. I can check my emails. I can do whatever. Gary Vee, totally opposite, wakes up in a panic, checks his phone for fires that need to be put out. I could never do that. I could never. He's a special breed. He's an animal. He's a beast. I love Gary Vee. I just, that way doesn't work for me or most individuals. So that's how, after I do all that stuff, I'm ready to go to work. I'm ready to go close because I've already seen it in my mind what's going to happen for the day. And then I have a separate checklist in my van with every close I'm crossing off, adding a number. That checklist is money. Who doesn't like adding up their money? Everybody likes adding up their money. So not only that is it fun, it's self-fulfilling, the sense of accomplishment when you cross off your number for that day, right? Adding to your weekly goal, which turns into a monthly goal, daily goal, all that stuff. But you're also sending pure and concise signals to the universe of what you expect from it.
I love it. I love it. Let's end on that note. One last question. I asked this to everybody. One last question.
Okay.
If you had to give, and just keep this short. So if you had to give any piece of advice to the door-to-door industry, like one piece of advice, what would that advice be?
Go to door virtual.
Yes.
Because not only has Sam arranged all the leaders in the industry, if you want to be a door knocker for the rest of your life, more power to you. In the grand scheme of things, it really isn't about that. Knocking on doors is learning how to sell, how to blend with every single type of person that's out there and close it. Not to mention the money's fantastic. And it put goosebumps on my skin where I'm going with this next part, is that these skills are going to allow you to make so much freaking money in the sales industry, period. I know people that are selling timeshares making $3 million a year in commissions, not in gross, in commissions in their pocket. I know another guy selling timeshares in Hawaii. He's been making $1 million in commission for several years. These guys go out, it's cash. They buy a Bentley, it's cash. Like, this is something to be excited about. Yeah, you're knocking on doors now to make money. That's a great reason to be doing it, but it's bigger than that. You're building a foundation to do whatever it is you want to do on life. If you're into crypto, you could be a salesman for that. If you're into exotic cars, my friend's a salesman for Ferrari. You can do whatever you want. And that's what I think the most beautiful thing about knocking on doors is.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm reading a book. I just started a book called Grit, and it talks about this grit test. And I'm like, I don't know what other job gives you more grit just from a mental toughness than
there isn't one.
And you can develop grit. Like, it's not something you just naturally are born with automatic. It's something that's developed over time, preparing you for whatever comes at you. I love that answer. Okay, well, thanks so much, Russell.
Thank you.
For being on the show. We can find your book on Amazon, right? A Door Knocker's Guide to the Universe. Go to his book by Russell Dean, and we're super excited to hear from you at Virtual. This will be awesome.
And the pleasure's all mine, man. I love what you're doing. Keep knocking it out of the park, and we'll see you at D2D Virtual.
Love it.